there's plenty of other stuff we could check in about, but we should just jump right into our main topic.
We have, yes, in our main topic. Because of the lack of movies currently in theaters, we're sort of been winging it with discussion points. And about 2 weeks ago, the famous David Lynch TV series Twin Peaks had its 30th anniversary. So I felt like it was appropriate to have a little discussion about the show, because you and I are both pretty big fans of this show. Would you say that this is your favorite thing David Lynch has ever done?
Okay, so it's complicated. Let's.
Okay.
How about we begin with our personal history with Twin Peaks, like where we came into the series.
Okay.
And that. So, do you want to go first, or should I?
I feel like you should go first, because
Sure.
I feel you definitely started before I did.
Yes, but okay. So we both started late.
Yes, very
from
late.
A certain
as
point
in within
of
the last 2 years late.
Yeah,
we did not start until the entirety of The Return had aired.
Yeah, so I have been a fan of David Lynch for a while. Mulholland Drive, great, and surprisingly enough, it's the only one of his films that I am like super a fan of, if that makes sense, right? Like, I like Eraserhead, I like Blue Velvet, and those films deserve a rewatch that I have not given them yet.
Okay,
but
I will say both of those. Just quick tangent.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, the only thing I haven't rewatched is Mulholland Drive.
Interesting.
I've seen Eraserhead and Blue Velvet 3 times.
I've probably seen Mulholland Drive 4 times.
Oh wow!
Yeah, including in a theater. I watched it at the Loft earlier this year. So
wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, movie theaters. That was another thing that was open this year.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I just like the idea of David Lynch before I watched Twin Peaks was just this kind of eccentric man who made really weird movies, and I loved Mulholland Drive, and that's about it, right? And I heard a ton about The Return. I heard it was great, and I was like, I should watch this. And I began an odyssey to watch the original series of Twin Peaks, which I did, but I skipped most of the middle of season 2 when people generally consider to be people consider and is lesser quality than the rest of the series, right?
It is, but so there's a good chunk of episodes you haven't even seen.
Yes.
Okay.
It was.
Part of
I
me
was
wants
just
you to watch them, but yeah,
I was so eager to get to The Return that I didn't have time for anything that was notorious for being of lesser quality.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that Lynch had essentially disowned himself. I was in it for Lynch, not for Twin Peaks.
Well.
Okay. And okay, well, let me continue. So there's a weird thing that Twin Peaks is just weird. I don't know how to properly express the fact that when I'm thinking about it after the fact, a few years after I've watched the original series, I think of it as like, what did I even like about that? At the same time, I think about Dale, I think about the coffee, I think about all the people in the town, and I can't really remember much of the original series. I can't really remember much of any of the specifics, but all I remember was just this wonderful little feeling of David Lynch is directing a quirky little mystery melodrama thing. And I don't know. I need to rewatch the original run of Twin Peaks. I really do need to. I couldn't this time around, and I didn't want to even start.
I'm surprised you got through the entirety of The Return.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because like I started The Return and I literally couldn't stop. And I knew that if I started the pilot of the original run, that I would feel invested and want to continue. And I didn't really have time for that. But I honestly couldn't tell you the first time I watched Fire Walk with Me. It was around that time, although I might have watched it before. I don't know. And Fire Walk with Me is great. It still boggles my mind that people thought it was trash when it first came out, because it's clearly
I didn't like it.
No, but it's a well-made movie.
but it's not trash.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
You read some of the reviews and you think that this is the worst thing. People have called it one of the worst things Lynch has ever done. I'm like, this is nowhere close to Dune. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, it's weird because I always feel bad when I read, interviews with Lynch about this whole movie because he was really proud of this movie and still is really proud of this movie. And I just feel bad that so many people disowned it as badly as they did.
Yeah, and I think The Return especially helped people. It had a bit of a revival, that, and then it was released by the Criterion Collection, so a lot of people have been revisiting Fire Walk with Me, and it's gotten some more attention recently.
Yeah, it's everyone who I know who's seen it holds it into very high regard.
It's just,
I also really recommend the review on it on Red Letter Media.
Yeah,
it's a great episode.
It's just the thing with Fire Walk with Me is that it's such a singular movie.
Yeah,
and it's a horror film that is unlike any other horror film. That it's about the final days of Laura Palmer, and there are moments in it that are what I would consider to be like pure cinema, where sound and image are being used in harmony to create a
feeling. The last 5 minutes.
That, and then I always remember when Mike drives up next to them on the road.
Just chaos.
And they're honking and it's just noise and everything. And if you step out of the anxiety of that moment, you realize how perfectly Lynch has brought together the elements of cinema to create that feeling. It's incredibly effective, the entire film.
Yeah.
I guess that's just my general thoughts on Fire Walk with Me. But yeah. What is your experience with Twin Peaks?
Well, my experience was I liked David Lynch. I liked Eraserhead. I had gone through Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet, and right around that time is where you were just constantly telling me to watch Twin Peaks. And I looked at it, I'm like, I had a weird aversion to older television at the time. Like the only old shows I liked were Frasier. I don't know what it is. I liked old movies, but old TV, there's just something I didn't enjoy about it. But you had bugged me and bugged me and bugged me to watch The Return. I'd never seen praise so unanimous for one single thing as I did with The Return, that this curiosity just overpowered me. And I knew that I had some shit to get through, but I really, really loved the first season. And I went through the entirety of the first season in 3 or 4 days. And then I got to the second season, and it starts off pretty good. And then you learn how Laura Palmer dies, and then you're like, there's still 10 episodes left. And at that point, it took me about 4 months to get through 10 episodes. Because unlike you, I watched all of it. Because you kept telling me, just go to the last 2 or 3. Just go to the last 2 or 3. And I thought, no, this is a show. I need to see all of it. And I can safely say none of that shit matters. It's never brought up again after the last 2 or 3 episodes. It can be skipped entirely. And then I get to the last few episodes of the season, and I'm like, oh, this is actually amazing again. And then I finally watched Fire Walk with Me after about a month or 2 later. I think it's decent. Not amazing. I thought it was kind of unnecessary at the time. And then I finally got to The Return. And I will always remember when I watched The Return, because I watched all 18 episodes over the course of 2 days. And over those 2 days, I would go to Starbucks 3 times a day because I always had to be drinking coffee while watching this. And I really, really like the first season. I think it's just as good, if not a little worse than The Return, but barely. I enjoy the quirkiness of it. I love Dale Cooper. I love the world of Twin Peaks. I love how melodramatic but also kind of horrifying it is. I honestly think if you're going to rewatch anything, I think you should rewatch the last episode of season 2, because I think that's right where he starts to go into the more Fire Walk with Me crazy side of Twin Peaks.
The last episode of season 2 is just generally considered to be one of the better things about Twin Peaks, just in general.
Yes, the last 20 minutes are just crazy. And then Fire Walk with Me, when I watched it again recently, I actually liked it a lot more.
Mhm.
I still don't necessarily find it super necessary, but it's very well done.
See, the thing with
But
Fire Walk with Me is that it's you you can't think of it as necessary because
yeah,
I would agree with the sentiment that it's not necessary, but the point is that it's the thing with prequels, and the thing
yeah,
that doesn't work with a lot of prequels is that they try to make themselves necessary in a way that
yeah,
you inherently can never do. Like the Star Wars prequels could never make themselves necessary because the original was just perfect in its own right and you never needed it in the first place, right?
yeah, yeah.
And the thing with the only prequel I can really think of at the moment is Better Call Saul. And the thing with that is that it's
It's like
like
it's
Fire Walk with
barely,
Me.
yeah.
It's a character study through and through. You know
Yes.
exactly what's going to
And
happen, but
and
it's
that
about
is
how.
why, yeah, and that's why when I was watching it the most recent time, I was actually a lot happier with it because I thought, okay, this isn't a Twin Peaks movie, this is a Laura Palmer movie, and I'm
Yeah,
okay with that.
it's a very different thing.
Yes. Uh but yeah, I love the original series. I think it's great. It's quirky, it's funny, it's strange. It still holds up in a lot of ways, but the return is just something completely different. And a year and a half later, and I'm watching it again for the second time, I still can't put into words why I like this so much.
All right, so general, I'm going to say my general thoughts on Twin Peaks: The Return. But let's just say that Twin Peaks: The Return is a continuation of the story of Twin Peaks, which is a small town in uh, Washington, in rural Washington. There's a girl named Laura Palmer. Palmer is murdered, and Special Agent Dale Cooper arrives from the FBI to investigate her murder. That's what the first series, the original run, is based around. And The Return is based around the idea that at the end of the second season, Dale Cooper is put inside of the Red Lodge, this
The
alternate,
Black Lodge.
the Black Lodge, right?
Yep.
And the Black Lodge and his evil doppelganger, who's possessed by the evil demon Bob, is out in the world, and that's how the season. That's how Twin Peaks ended for the longest time,
25 years ago.
and
And all I can
almost.
think about is
Uh huh.
how unfortunate it must have been for the diehard Twin Peaks that fans that died before the
Yeah,
return came out.
that's
Uh
sad.
it's sad to think about, but
Moment of
yeah.
silence.
Moment of silence for the Twin Peaks fans who didn't live to see the return.
But the thing about The Return is that The Return is a very different thing than the original Twin Peaks, and yet it is very
It's
similar at the same
so
time.
different. It has the
And
same tone and the
yeah,
same weirdness and the same, I don't want to say horror elements to it, but
it's
when you
more
really
horrifying.
look at what the return is about and what happens, it's almost a completely different show.
It's a different show with the same characters in some of it. Emphasis on some of it. Um,
Some of it, yes.
yeah. So the
Because
return
it's
is
yeah.
Dale Cooper is trying to get out of the Black Lodge and return to Twin Peaks to save Twin Peaks from the evil forces that are trying to do things. That's about as simple as you can get. It's
It really is. And there's a lot of moving parts.
right.
But what I find so fascinating about this is kind of like the Fargo show. This is kind of like a greatest hits of everything David Lynch has done.
It kind of is.
There are so many different characters and situations and shots that you're like, oh, that reminds me of Inland Empire. Oh, that reminds me of Eraserhead. Oh, that's a little bit of Blue Velvet. But it never feels like a straight reference. And I don't know. It's just something so massive and so strange. And then, because, when I think about everything I love about Twin Peaks, The Return has none of it.
It has a
But it
little.
also has some
It
of
has
it.
like moments, brief
It has
glimpses
it.
of it.
Yes, and because like of all the Twin Peaks characters, my favorite is by far Dale Cooper,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's in the entire 18 hours for maybe 40 minutes.
He's in the first two episodes where he's mostly silent and just walking
Mhm.
around, And then he's in the last two episodes, spoilers, where I feel like it's pretty widely known now that because there was a big backlash, not a backlash, but people were like, when is Dale Cooper coming back? We want Dale
Yes.
Cooper. God damn it. And
Yes.
it's now fairly widely known that he doesn't actually return to the show until the very end. And we only really get Dale Cooper for a few scenes, and then something happens and we get a
Yes.
yet another Dale Cooper. There's many Dale Coopers in this.
Yes. And the Dale Cooper in the last episode is like a mixture.
Yeah.
He's not entirely Dale Cooper, but he's enough Dale Cooper. And let's just get right into it.
Yeah. So okay, I just want to state, I don't know what you were going to do, but state the general opinion of it, because my opinion's different than yours of The Return.
What of the Return?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's not what I expected. It's not what I knew I wanted, but now going back and seeing it, I love every second of it. So many of the things that when I watched it the first time kind of perplexed and almost angered me, I've come to love about The Return. Specifically Dougie.
So The Return it's such a weird thing because Lynch thinks of it as a movie, but
Which it's not.
Yeah, it's so clearly not.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it on Letterboxd because I was going to log it, and I was like, what am I giving Twin Peaks? What is the score? And I feel like watching Twin Peaks this second time around, I was disappointed with the fact that it was not as euphoric of an experience as when the first time I watched it was.
The Return?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was something about watching the original series all the way through Fire Walk with Me and then The Return. And The Return is just something so special after having watched all of that, after having spent the time with the characters, that you're waiting for this release of just your validation of your love of these characters. And Lynch only gives you little hints of the original series here and there, of like,
that's
here's your
what
payoff.
I love
finally
about it, though.
No, that's exactly it. And the fact that I watched it by itself this time, I think really didn't have the magic as much. But that being said, don't take that as me saying it's any less good as it was before. It just was a different experience, if that makes sense.
Well, the thing is, ever since I've seen the original Twin Peaks, I do keep a lot of it retained in my brain. I watch a lot of clips and highlights and scenes. So when I've been watching The Return recently, I still have those original characters in my head, in my mind. I know what they look like and feel like. And that is what's so powerful about The Return, when you see just how much everything has changed. But I do agree that I love how this show teases you in so many, like, you would think it's like when you're watching The Return, you get so little of the original Twin Peaks in every episode, and it's never the stuff you expect. Like, the first characters you see, aside from Dale Cooper and Laura Palmer in the original Twin Peaks, is fucking Jacoby. And I'm like, I don't care about Jacoby. Show me anyone else. It starts with Jacoby.
It's a statement of the philosophy of the show. We're not going to give you what you want just
exactly
yet.
But at the same time, that's kind of great, because when I do get the things that I want, I'm so happy. Like, we don't get to see Bobby until like episode 3 or 4.
No, it's like 5.
Oh, even later. It's Gordon.
It was
Cole,
later than I thought when I was watching. I was like, where the hell's Bobby?
Can I just say, though, going through it this time, I always thought Dale Cooper was my number one character. I love Gordon Cole, and I think a huge reason why The Return is so great to me is there's so much more Gordon Cole.
I love Lynch's Gordon Cole is like that's a top 10 all-time character.
It is. And I was thinking about it earlier this year because, there's a lot of movies where the director's act cameos. And for the longest time, I always thought, okay, you know who's the best director actor? I love when Martin Scorsese acts. I think he's great in Taxi
Oh,
Driver.
I don't know where you pulled that out of, but must have
He's
been your
great in
ass.
Taxi Driver,
That's not the point. He's in it for like 5 minutes at
but he's
most.
amazing in it.
Okay,
But when
but the best
okay,
director
I will
actor
say,
is the answer is clearly Orson Welles. But
okay, yes,
you know,
you're right. You're right. I apologize. But he's one of those character or those actors. When I see him in a movie, I see the character. I don't see the actor. Unlike someone like Tarantino or Hitchcock. But then I was thinking about it earlier this week, and I'm like, no, it's David Lynch, because Gordon Cole. It just everything about Gordon Cole just kind of captures what is so funny and charming about David Lynch. We've discussed this before. He may
mhm.
not be our favorite director, but David Lynch is one of the most entertaining directors outside of their own films.
You can the behind the scenes features of David Lynch talking is just entertaining in and of its own right, as much as any movie is.
It's just like Orson Welles or Spike Lee, where you're like, I don't 100%. I'm not always on board with your filmography, but you were just funny to listen to. Or Werner Herzog, and
Well,
yeah,
I think particularly with people like Orson Welles, Werner Herzog, and
mhm.
Lynch, they all have very distinctive voices.
Yes,
And
that's also
Lynch,
true.
like Orson Welles in particular, he has a kind of a more normal voice than most, but it's very
Yeah.
deep and he has a good way of speaking.
Yes,
Lynch, on
yes.
the other hand, is just I don't know where he developed the way he
He's an
speaks,
alien.
but it's so strange that it matches up. Everything about David Lynch is on brand. Like the way he lives his
All of it.
life is just incredibly in line with the way he makes his movies and the way they
Hmm.
look. And I really appreciate that.
But yeah, what's great about the Return too is that they take all the characters from the original Twin Peaks, and I'd say most of them have pretty drastically changed, aside from Andy and Lucy. And can I
Oh,
just say, watching The Return again, I forgot that Michael Cera was their son, and I laughed so hard when I saw him. And
oh,
that's the thing, is that I think, okay,
hmm,
it's really hard to classify comedy, but if we're talking about my favorite comedy directors, David Lynch just makes some of the funniest stuff. And it's not overtly funny, but it's the way that David Lynch presents it that it shouldn't be funny, but it is.
yeah.
It's
So
just
one of the
odd.
scenes that so to continue from like 20 minutes ago, my thoughts on the return is that I get annoyed sometimes, particularly with this last viewing of the return.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's a perfect piece of media. I think
Well,
Lynch makes mistakes here and there here.
that's the thing. Okay, I want to get
And
into that. But go
okay,
go ahead. But
yes,
I have, yeah.
but I think there's genuine like he holds on scenes too long sometimes. He likes his languid, his slow pacing too
Uh-huh.
much, and I think he really could in very specific moments. Most of the time this is not the case. But I just like when I think about the return, there were moments when I was watching it that I was like, this is good, but this is not as like perfect as I remember it was. And then I get to the end of every episode, and then I look back on it, and like, you know what? This may not be perfect in any way, shape, or form, but I do not feel morally correct. I do not feel good about myself giving it any less than 5 stars. I don't think you can. Like it's
It,
perfect in its
it
imperfection, if that makes
yes,
sense.
it is
And
very, it's
yeah,
so unique. It really is unlike anything.
it's there's a lot of movies that I think are greater than the sum of its parts that manage to overcome any negatives about them.
Yeah.
The thing about the return is there's not that many negatives. It's like minus, like a little minus here and there, but it's like if you start from a score of like 100, like every
Yeah.
movie starts from 100, and I might take off 5 points here and there every episode. But
Yeah.
then the overall total score, I'd be like, I think about this, and this is 200% good,
Hmm.
right? Like something about the way he pulls it all together, and I think that has a lot to do with the amount of thinking and the amount of like cross referencing that goes into Twin Peaks,
Yeah.
that you can look at one point in the series and connect it to something else. And the thing about watching The Return is it makes you feel like a detective yourself,
Yeah.
because you have like the clipboard of all these photos and people, and you're trying to figure
Yes.
everything out. And Lynch, you don't always understand it. You don't even necessarily understand it when you're done, but you know that there is, he
I
gives you the implicit
yeah.
sense that there it is correctly made, that everything is in its place. And
And
it's
yeah,
wonderful to have that just comfort.
that was how I felt when I was watching the first time, where I'm like 15 or 16 episodes in and I'm like, what do I think of this? I don't know. And when I get to the ending and that final scene, I just remember feeling a very, very, very deep, I had a very deep emotional reaction. And I'm like, I don't understand what just happened. I've been clueless for the past hour and a half, but I feel very strongly about what I just saw and I have no idea why. And I think a huge part of it is the fact that this series pulls you in so many different directions. I just okay, so there's three main stories going on. There's Mr. C's darkness, and okay, there's four, I guess. Mr. C's fucked up crime shit that's happening. There is Gordon Cole trying to find Dale Cooper. There is Dougie, and then I feel like the people, the whole everything that happens in the town of Twin Peaks is kind of reflective of us because they're just trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. But I just want to say this because I agree with you in the sense that I don't think it all works, but I don't mind the stuff that doesn't work. But here is what the biggest like question I've always had is I
Mhm.
can never tell when David Lynch is just being inept or he's purposefully making it this way.
So what do you
Because
mean? Give me a moment.
okay, I'm not I'll be very broad. The entirety of the series, mainly the stuff in Las Vegas, there is a lot of things that just feel cheap to me. I think the lighting in a lot of Dougie stuff is really flat. I think the camera quality is kind of bad. There is an insane amount of time in this series where people are just making phone calls and talking on the phone. And I'm like, this is all like B movie shit. Like, this isn't the work of a master. But then you see stuff like episode 8 with the bomb going off, and I'm just like, I'm amazed at everything I'm looking at right now. This is just gorgeous. It's 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 amazing to look at. It has amazing sound design. It's creepy. It's imaginative, and then I just it's a show that can take you from a nuclear explosion with demonic lumberjacks planting bugs in little girls' mouths and crushing skulls, and then we see fucking Dougie.
Uh,
And there are so many times when I was originally watching the show where I had to pause it and be like, "Am I watching Twin Peaks right now? What is going on?" But then by the end of it, it all works itself out, and I think this is the same thing that we've had, both of us, and I
mhm.
think most people who watch this. I feel like the first 10 episodes, maybe 8 or 9, I feel like everybody just hates the Dougie stuff, and there just becomes a certain point where the Dougie stuff is your it's refreshing. It's your break from all the creepiness and madness and terror where I'll see like Mr. C punch craters in people's face, but then I see the Las Vegas lighting and Naomi Watts and Dougie and I'm like, "Oh, I'm home. Please
Yeah,
keep me here."
the series is all about the juxtapositioning of the darkness and the light that pervades
Yes.
so much of Lynch's filmography.
Yeah.
That I it's here's the thing, it is very intentional. Everything, including the visual style that Lynch is using, is intentional. And it
Yes.
intentionally looks like a TV show. And we're gonna get into that eventually.
Oh,
Um, but
yeah.
Twin Peaks is like watching it this time around, I found myself loving some things that I didn't love the first time and really noticing some things I didn't notice the first time. Right?
Yeah.
So the visual style I have been completely accustomed to and it works for me.
It no,
I
it
think
works
it
for me
actually it looks
too.
good in its own way.
It does. And that's the thing is that like so much of this I'm like anyone else I would hate this. I don't know why I like this. It works so well for just how uncomfortable the show is a lot of times where it's, it's almost a TV show. You're
Well,
like, okay,
it's
these
you have this the series begins with footage from the old series
yeah.
where it's I'll see you in 25 years
Mhm.
and surprisingly enough you do 25 years later Lynch revives it.
Yep.
And then you see Dougie not Dougie Dale
Dale
Cooper
Cooper.
in with the giant,
Mhm.
and that looks very cinematic in its black and white form.
Oh yeah, it looks great. All the stuff in
um
the Black Lodge looks amazing, and the
yeah,
theater.
and then you go into the real world, quote unquote,
Mhm.
and that looks like a TV show. It looks flat. It has very just kind of point and shoot kind of mentality to it sometimes.
Yeah. Especially the
And
stuff with Jacoby at the beginning.
yeah, but you I think it's important that Lynch shows you the quality stuff first. Like he
Yeah.
gives you a little taste of like there's this supernatural world that is underneath all of this just kind of mundane reality.
Yeah.
And he uses this kind of flat image to just show you it's mundane reality. But you have this implicit feeling throughout the entirety of the return that just something horribly awful is underneath the surface. But at the same time, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know, it's he does so much with so little that and I still don't know how he does it. I really don't. And I would completely understand if someone were to see Twin Peaks and just be like, "Oh, this is dumb." I don't agree, but I'm just like it's just so hard to put into words how I feel about this show.
One of the scenes that really bothered me this time around is
Okay.
because I have nothing but praises for the return,
Yeah.
essentially. It's just moments here and there that I felt like, come on, David, what are you doing? And this time around, I felt the Dougie stuff was excellent.
It's so much
Um,
fun. It's so
but
goofy.
not,
It's so lighthearted in a world of darkness.
yeah, but not everything worked perfectly on the second run. And
Yeah.
the first scene, the first Audrey scene,
Yeah.
um, once you know where it's going, it is painfully long in a way that some of the other scenes that are maybe a little
Yeah.
too long, they're not painfully long. They're fine. I'm okay with them. That
Uh-huh.
one in particular stood out to me as I was just watching it. Like, you are repeating dialogue, you are doing stuff. I get the point. Lynch, you
Yeah.
have gone on too long. That's the one point in the series that I was like pointing out. Is like this needed to be cut. I get it though.
The first time I saw it, I think I was just so happy to see Audrey again that I didn't care what was going on. I haven't gotten to that part
Yeah,
yet
but
in
that's the
rewatching.
problem.
Yeah.
Is that doesn't
Oh, I
work on
know.
a
I
rerun.
know. Exactly. I know.
Um, yeah, but beyond that, there's other stuff that worked even better the second time around. The sweeping the floor scene, the infamous. There's
Yeah.
just minutes of a guy sweeping the floor. Like that went by in a flash for me. I loved it for some reason this time around. And then in particularly, as you said, Dougie. I think that if anyone rewatches The Return who didn't necessarily like Dougie the first time around, Dougie's the best part of the show.
Dougie's just fun. Everything about Dougie is fun.
It
Because when you know
Yeah.
where it's going, you can just sit back and relax. Because
Yeah.
the first time, every time Dougie was on, I'm like, just come back, Dale. And I feel like everybody was feeling that. But once you know how long it takes for Dougie to resolve itself, you're like, oh, I'm enjoying this. This is fun. This is a lot of fun.
But you look at Dougie's storyline, and there are multiple points of conflict, multiple journeys that characters around him go through. That it's amazing, like how much narrative goes around Dougie before you actually
It's
get Dale
crazy
back.
just how much plot happens to arguably the most passive character in TV history.
Have you seen Being There? Hal Ashby's movie.
No, with Peter Sellers.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
not. No.
I think you should see it. It's the clear inspiration for Dougie.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of a blank slate, a tabula rasa character,
Okay.
who is just doesn't say much, but a lot of people
Mhm.
project onto him, and he affects people's lives around him positively.
Okay. So
But
like Forrest Gump.
yeah, but not a idiot and not
Oh, okay.
annoying.
Dougie's not an idiot though. He's very capable.
Yes, he's
He
just
took
slow.
down that ice pick assassin.
There's, I don't know. Dougie was just, oh, I love that. I love that stuff so much.
It's crazy to me that a character like Dougie, who does so little, is one of my favorites in the entire show.
Yeah.
He's and the most quotable, maybe because that's all he says is the same lines over and over. But
call for help. The first
Dougie
time
Jones.
when Dougie's in the casino, that's one of my favorite scenes. He's just walking around.
Yeah. It goes on for so long too.
I love it. Every second of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. So yeah, I put together a few to focus some of my thoughts. I put together my top 10 moments from Twin Peaks: The Return.
So did I.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I did.
So,
but I didn't order them in rank, but I do have one that I think is the best, and I will tell you that one when we get to it. I went in chronological order, so I had 10 moments.
Same.
3 from the original series, or 4 from the original series, 2 from the movie, and then 4 from the Return.
Interesting. So, in one of the moments I think is underappreciated is not necessarily a moment that, you know, the Roadhouse, and then it has the weekly song being played.
Yes.
And I kind of felt not annoyed by that sometimes in the original run when I was watching it. I was just like, okay, now it's the end. It's the end of the episode.
Yeah,
we're done now.
Except for the time where a full fucking Trent Reznor song is played in episode 8, right before it starts to get weird. An entire Trent Reznor song.
Yes.
And I'm just like, do we need to see the entire song? It's not a very good song, and you're not doing anything crazy with the way it's filmed. That's one of my
But it's about building the mood of.
Yeah, and you can do it in 2 minutes. It doesn't take 5.
Yeah, this is true. That might be another moment where it's like you could cut a little of this. You really could. But I think the series, out of all of the Roadhouse moments of the songs at the end, my favorite is at the beginning. It's one of my favorites of the show.
Yeah.
Sorry to burst your bubble there.
Do you know who I was going to say is the best song?
No.
It's James.
No.
Yeah. Because, okay, I don't know if you saw the episode. Did you see the episode with James's song?
Yeah.
Okay. That is one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. It is such a bad song, and it is one of the worst scenes in the whole show. And that's the power of the Return. Because when I saw James take the stage, I'm like, oh, is he going to do it? And he did it. And I hate the song still, but I was like, yes, James's song. And also, just quick little tangent. At the beginning in the first episode where Shelley says James is always cool, I was just like, shut up, David Lynch. No, he wasn't.
Oh.
Everybody hates James.
Really? No.
I hated James. He was the worst. In The Return, he's great, though.
He's barely in The Return.
Exactly.
So one of my favorite moments in The Return, speaking of James is cool, is that's actually the end of episode 2.
Yeah.
Which I think the best song of the Roadhouse series is Shadow by Chromatics. And the line is, James is cool. He's always been cool. I actually really love that moment.
I do too, because it shows that David Lynch really loves these characters, even if that love isn't always justified.
Yeah, and I think it's, this time around you pick up on things that you didn't notice the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of the first episode is the giant listening. He says, "Listen to the sounds," and then it's the the gramophone, and it
Mhm.
plays a little noise, whatever. I don't know how you begin to
Is
describe
it the
some of the noises
arms
that David
sound?
Lynch creates.
Yeah,
What?
that's another thing. Just this whole series, like the sound when the lumbermen or whatever are crushing that guy's skull, and he
Ugh.
crushes that skull for like 5 minutes,
You know,
is
David Lynch does his own sound design.
oh, I'm sure he does because he's got albums. The man's a musician,
Yeah.
but just a lot of the more horror sounds in this series are just as horrific to hear as they are to see.
It's terrible. But,
Yeah, it's
you
great.
know, you listen to, so the end of the first episode is listen to the sounds. And then you're like, okay, on the first
Mhm.
run. But on the second run, you're like, okay, maybe I should listen to what's actually being said in the songs that David Lynch is picking out. And I think the most
Okay.
important of all of those songs is in the second episode, which is Shadow. And it's singing about like, for the last time, Shadow, take me down with you. And it's just, it's a good song. It puts you in like the mood for the
Yeah.
series. And I think it's the first time that I start like vibing, like just like
Mm-hmm.
sitting back in my chair and like, oh, I'm back
Mm-hmm.
finally. So that's why I love that. That's my favorite of the Roadhouse songs in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Perhaps one of the greatest moments in all of television, is the nuclear bomb sequence of episode 8.
Yes. It oh, okay. This is what I'm saying where I'm like, okay, obviously this is where I learned that the cheap aesthetic was intentional because just those few minutes of the bomb going off, it is sensory overload in
Mm-hmm.
the best way. It is such a crisp image of such a horrible thing with just anxiety inducing violins, and it's probably the most nightmarish thing he's done in a man who devoted his entire career to capturing the feel of a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's probably the most terrifying thing he's done. And
Yep.
it also, there's another layer where you're just thinking, oh, people watch this on TV. This isn't some weird art house thing that's only shown for twice in a month. Millions of people waited between commercial breaks to see this for like 12 minutes. And it is terrifying. It's great.
It's beautiful. The miniature work, the effects work.
Oh my god. I don't even know
Wow.
how they did it. I thought it was all
Beautiful.
CG. Is it miniatures?
The I think the shot, some stuff like the convenience store,
Okay.
the
I love the convenience store stuff. That
the
weird time
shot, the
lapse
opening
thing
shot.
they do.
Yeah, the opening shot of the camera going into the nuclear bomb.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that, the surface, the New Mexico landscape,
Uh-huh.
it
Okay.
feels more real than an actual CGI created environment, but I don't know.
It's funny because I just watched that episode recently, and then it starts off really creepy with Mr. C being shot and the woodsman reviving him, and that's another nightmare sequence where the sound is just it's very terrifying and it's unsettling, just the way that whole scene happens, and it's the least scary thing in the whole episode.
Yeah, I don't. What could be said about episode 8 that hasn't already?
Yeah,
Without,
it is a crazy episode and it is a great episode. It's not my favorite episode, and I find it strange. I think it's just because it's so out there that people think of it as like the holy grail of the return. And again, I enjoy it, but it's not my favorite episode.
See, I have been so desensitized over the past 2 years to cinema that is like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've seen plenty of out there movies and experimental stuff that episode 8 is, I watch it now and it's just kind of tame.
It is. But for TV,
oh, well, for TV, as someone who
Yeah.
doesn't watch TV, I can understand the implications of broadcasting something like that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. We mentioned it
also it's
earlier,
yeah.
but Call for Help, another one of my favorite moments.
Mr. Jackpots.
So now, those are like 3 moments from the first half of the return,
Yeah.
and the rest are all from like the last couple episodes.
Of the return.
And I think
Okay.
that's not to like diminish the impact. of the first half of the series.
Yeah.
Because I think they're great episodes, but they're building up. They're
Oh,
setting up the mystery of the world,
the
and
best
you're
the
waiting for the payoff.
yeah the a lot of the appeal of the return is just how everything pays off in the last 4 episodes. And the
Yeah.
fact that it takes so long to get there is kind of what makes it great. But the act of taking so long to get there is still really entertaining. But there's just these little moments sprinkled in that hint at something it's working towards. And that keeps you watching and it keeps you just on the edge of your seat. And it is. Okay. I've, are we are we in agreement of what the greatest part of the entire return is?
I don't know.
Do you want me
So
to
what
just
is your
say
favorite
mine?
part of the return?
This is my favorite part of the return and probably of the entire show, and that is I am the FBI.
And then the original theme plays, and it's your
Oh
home.
my
Your home.
god. It it's the it is the it's it's probably the best payoff to anything. I don't know. I can't even explain to you how giddy I felt in that moment.
Here's the thing. The emotion I felt the first time I watched that was a similar emotion where if you're like, let's say you're home for the holidays
Uh-huh.
and your significant other or a family member surprises you and they're suddenly home and you open the door and they're there. That's the feeling. That's exactly the like no
It's
less. I'm not exaggerating.
yeah,
In
no.
fact, that might be under exaggerating how
I
magnificent this moment is.
I think it is the closest thing I can probably describe it as. You ever see those videos where there's parents and they have their children returning home from war and they surprise them and like they just show up in like their military outfits and the look of pure joy you see on the mother's face is just very infectious. That is
Mm-hmm.
the closest thing I can describe to this moment.
Yes,
And it makes everything before it worth it. That moment alone, it could have been I I don't know. I think that moment alone is what makes the entirety of the return worth the hype. Because I feel like any other quote unquote revival show would show you all of the shit from you're expecting to be revived in the first 2 or 3 episodes. And Twin Peaks takes its time showing you little bits here and there, not necessarily in the best order of importance, but then it all leads up to the magical moment where you're like, oh my god, Twin Peaks is back. And then you're like, oh, there's only 2 episodes left.
Here's okay. Have you ever seen The Lives of Others?
No, I haven't actually.
Interesting. Okay, you should. I think it's still on Netflix. It might not be though. So The Lives of Others. It's a great German film, and it's about a like a secret police agent in
Uh-huh.
East Germany who's listening in on this couple, and who secretly like he starts relating to them and starts helping them
Mm-hmm.
avoid the being persecuted by the communist government. Uh, and there's a moment in the end where he gets this recognition
Yeah.
for like what he's done because he hasn't done like what he's done is secret. Like
Mm-hmm.
he kept secret this good act that he did,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this just kind of this euphoric moment of like you're suddenly like happy because a good deed has been done, and that's all you need.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know why, but I was reminded of that when Dougie wakes up and you're reminded how good of a person Dale
Dale
Cooper
Cooper.
is, but B, he shakes the hand and he's like, "You're a good
He's
man, Bushnell Lawrence. I will not soon forget your kindness." I'm like,
yes.
"You're
Uh,
back, but you're such a wholesome person."
he is immediately Dale Cooper again.
He's immediately Dale Cooper. He's good. And that line in particular, where he's acknowledging what his boss, this insurance man, has done for him
Uh-huh.
before, it's
That's Dale
it's like
Cooper.
the show is acknowledging the journey we just went through. It's not just erasing it with the appearance of Dale Cooper.
Uh-huh.
It's saying, hey, this all mattered. It was important. This
Yeah.
good stuff happened here. and
Yeah.
now it's time to be with Dale Cooper.
Can I just say, quick tangent.
Okay.
Uh, Kyle MacLachlan has always been regarded as a pretty good actor, you know. But I think The Return, he is just so good in The Return. He's
Let's
playing
see. He plays
four
Mr.
different
C.
roles.
He plays Dougie. He plays Dale Cooper, and he plays Richard.
Who's Richard? Is he the
Richard and
ending
Linda?
character? Yeah, okay. So, well, that's okay. He plays Dougie. He plays Dale Cooper. He plays Dale Cooper in Dougie. Because there's a little bit of just Dougie before Dale Cooper became Dougie. It's only like a few scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Mr. C, and then you have Richard. And they're all so different.
Yep.
Mr. C. Okay, so here, I know. Okay, I recently was reminded how much I love Blue Velvet. I don't know the last time you've seen Blue Velvet.
It's been a while.
Who do you think is scarier, Frank Booth or Mr. C?
Frank Booth, maybe.
I don't know, because I just saw, I watched both of these recently, and there is just something that is so terrifying about Mr. C.
See, the thing about The Return is that it's fantastical in a certain way, and that it provides a little distance between me and Mr. C. There's not that much difference between Frank and me.
That's
when
true.
Watching Blue Velvet.
That's true. But yeah, would you consider that your favorite part in the entire series, or The Return?
See, that's the thing. I think I might just have like a tie for every moment that made me feel something. But that's probably, if it's not number one, it's number two.
What was your other one then?
I don't know. So there's a few moments. I'm just gonna kind of rattle them off.
Yeah, I'm still gonna go through mine, so we should hurry this up.
There's we are like the dreamer who dreams
and
then lives inside of a dream. That scene is one of my favorites.
Yes,
where Lynch has his little dream.
Again, Gordon Cole.
Yes,
so great.
Oh,
he's such a funny character.
While I'm here, one of the things that annoyed me the first time around was the French woman scene where he has this French woman over and she takes forever to get out of the room. And then I just was dying of laughter the second time I watched it. I was like, this is great. I love it. It's so David Lynch.
Oh, wait. Are you talking about... Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. Are you talking about the woman who can't find the keys to the dead woman's house or apartment?
No.
Because that part made me laugh the first time I watched it. I'm like, what is going on? But watching it this time, I'm like... Because, the cops show up because she calls the cops. They show up. They try to get a key to get into the apartment. And she's like, oh, the lady's gone. And then they go to the maintenance worker for the key. And the maintenance worker doesn't have the key. And then the lady's like, oh, wait, I have a key. And you're like, you spent 5 minutes opening this door. And it doesn't pay off in any way, but it's just funny.
Yeah, that's all it is. No, remember David Lynch? I'm going to say David Lynch, but I mean Gordon Cole.
Yes.
They're
essentially the same person.
Albert comes in. He wants to tell him something, but there's the woman in there with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's... Anyway, so... yeah, we are like the dreamer who dreams. This is an underrated moment. Episode 15 might be one of my favorite, like an underrated best episode.
But that's where Dale Cooper comes back, isn't it?
No, it's 16.
Oh, okay.
But 15, Norma and Ed finally get together.
That's so wholesome.
That's probably like the moment of release for every Twin Peaks fan of the original series.
Yeah.
Because after that, you don't get much of the original cast.
Yep.
You do, but not as... That's probably the most euphoria, the most conclusiveness you get out of the original Twin Peaks series.
It's nice that they had one storyline that was untainted by this evil.
Yeah. And that works out. And it's great. It's... You're with him. There's this song, I've been loving you for so long, blah, blah, blah. Anyway... And then he was like, will you marry me? And she's like, yes. And then it cuts to like shots of nature, like the clouds billowing. Mm-hmm. The way Lynch has edited this has made the moment seem like it's the greatest thing in the history of mankind. Right? Like it's like God himself is letting Norma and Ed finally get together. And it's wonderful.
But that's the thing, is that he's just as infatuated with this more romantic, wholesome stuff as he is with a little person with an ice pick. And that's what makes it so magical.
Ike the Spike. That's an
Ike the
underrated character.
When he kills the first woman and the spike is in her stomach and he wriggles it around, I'm just like, oh, why?
And then the spike gets bent, and he looks so sad about it.
Okay, so I was watching this recently, and that part happens, and I'm like, oh god! And then he the way he looks at the spike for a minute, I was like, oh, spike is broken. I felt bad.
David Lynch is up there with the Coen brothers with just making throwaway characters really interesting.
Oh god. But that's okay. The biggest laugh I had in that episode is when the credits rolled and they said his name was Ike the Spike, and I'm like, of fucking course it is.
Oh,
Ike the Spike.
So, episode 15 also has the death of the log lady. R.I.P.
Every scene she's in is just so tragic because the actress was so close to death at the time.
Yeah. But that ending where she's like, my log is turning gold.
Yeah.
It gets to me every time. It still holds power for me.
Sad.
I'm going to do... Okay, so Audrey's Dance, the end of episode 16.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. Especially, oh god, the fear that she has on her face when the fight breaks out. Oh god, it breaks my heart. And then
that's one of the moments where the kind of cheap style of Twin Peaks, it's still the cheapness of the visuals, but it suddenly becomes very cinematic with the purple lighting on her and the way she's dancing. It's some of the best shots in the show.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Also episode 16, when the Mitchum brothers are the fight. So Chantel and what's his name? Tim Roth. They're hanging outside of Dougie's house, and this whole thing happens, and the insurance guy pulls up, is like, I'll move your car. That might be like, I don't understand. It's just one of the greatest scenes. I love it so much. It's funny. It's out of nowhere. And then when the Mitchum brothers turn to each other, it's like, what kind of neighborhood is this? And it's like, people are under a lot of stress lately, Bradley. That line gets to me every time.
It's, oh my god, a similar one. I don't remember what episode it is. I don't remember because I haven't seen it in a while. I just watched the scene. Wilson, how many times have I told you this is what we do in the FBI?
David Lynch really is. This is a good comedy. The Return is a good comedy.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Every David Lynch movie, even the scariest ones, have some genuinely really funny moments. That moment in particular reminded me of the Hey Paul thing from Eraserhead. Do you remember that bit? Oh, God. It's just, you never expect the comedy to come when it does, and when it does, it's just so outrageous, it just kills me.
So I have 2 moments left, but I'll save them for later. So what are yours?
Should I go through? I'll be quick. So in chronological order, start with the return or the beginning. I love the way Pete delivers the line, "She's dead, wrapped in plastic." It's quotable. I love Pete. He's my favorite pre-return character. It immediately sets the tone for just how awkward and strange they treat this morbid subject matter. When they're outside in the original series, Dale Cooper and the other police officers, I don't remember what they're doing, but Dale Cooper takes a sip of his coffee, spits it out, and goes, "Damn good coffee and hot." It just makes me laugh because I'm like, I'm amazed he pulled off a line that stupid. Another Pete moment, there was a fish in the percolator. I love Pete. He's my favorite, and I'm sad that he died before the return. But yes. The ending to season 2, like the last 20 minutes when he's in the Black Lodge and how's Annie and he hitting his head in the mirror. Crazy stuff. Oh, yeah. Laura's ascension at the end of Fire Walk with Me. That's where it clicked with me the second time watching it. I'm just like, oh, this is, I don't know, he gives so much importance to this event. It's just ugh. Uh, and then yeah, like we discussed before, when Mike confronts Leland in Firewalk with Me,
Mm.
just using
Mm-hmm.
every element of filmmaking to just make you uncomfortable. Now, as for the return stuff, I'm gonna add one real quick just because I think it's great. When Bobby does his police work with the sick kid, I love Bobby in the return. Bobby is one of the most annoying characters in the original show, but he's oh my god, every scene with him in the return, he's aged so well, both inside and out. The moments he has where he reminisces about Major Briggs are just so heartwarming. He's a great police officer, and it's a nice to see that little shitty kid become a great police officer and a great man. And it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking that Shelley couldn't do the same. Um, Mr. Jackpots, we've discussed. This is a moment from a smaller moment from one of the
Oh, okay.
what?
Before we move on, I'm sorry. One of my so wholesome is when the old woman comes to thank Dougie, Mr. Jackpots.
Oh
Remember? And
yeah,
the piano music slows down.
it's so nice. That's
It's there are moments where David Lynch gets so sappy and so wholesome that it works only because
he's so
there's
earnest.
nuclear bombs and people's head exploding. It works because of the juxtapositioning of those two things.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
that's one of my when she thanks that's another moment of a character thanking another character
Mm-hmm.
that really gets to me. I was just like,
It's so
there's
you almost forget
humanity
about her.
here
Yeah,
that's really beautiful to see.
and
Continue.
just to go on the I am the FBI scene again is that another huge part of why that scene is so impactful because you're so happy to see Dale, but I'm also kind of sad to see Dougie go.
Yeah.
But yeah, a really
Always
small,
happy to see the Sunset Boulevard clip that reawakens him, Gordon
oh
Cole.
yes, yes. Oh god, that's another thing watching for the first time is you see all these little things like him taking his first sip of coffee, him putting on a suit, him looking at a gun. You're like, is he gonna remember? Is he gonna remember? And then he doesn't. But that's really only a first time thing. Again, a really small moment from episode 4 or 5, I think, is when Dougie takes the coffee that was meant for Frank, that guy who works at the insurance thing, and they start the meeting. And Frank looks at the intern. He's like, "Where's my coffee?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I gave it to Dougie. He really wanted it." And the guy just looks pissed, and he's like, I have a green tea instead. You can have that." He's like, "I don't want a green tea." And then there's a beat, and the guy's like, "I'll give it here." And he takes it, and he looks at it so suspiciously, and he takes a sip, and there's
And
a
he
faint
loves it.
he loves it. And I'm like, this is 2 minutes. This is a whole 2 minutes devoted to something that could easily just be shrugged off, and that's why it's great. It's just funny. It's dumb. I love the guy's performance. Yeah, I am the FBI. Greatest moment in the show, in my opinion. And I love the ending of the return.
Yeah.
The
So
last like scene.
let's now get into just as briefly as possible, which might not turn out to be briefly, the the greater meaning behind Twin Peaks: The Return.
Okay, and
Because I
is
don't
this
think
where
it's
you're gonna
it's
bring up your analysis on the 4 hour video?
yeah. So what
Okay.
is this 4 hour video that we're talking about?
Okay, so there's a YouTube channel called what is it? Twin something?
Yes.
Okay. The point is, if you're a fan of Twin Peaks and you've watched Twin Peaks stuff on YouTube, odds are you've been recommended this video. It's a 4.5 hour long video where some guy essentially breaks down his interpretation of Twin
Twin
Peaks.
Perfect.
Twin Perfect, yes. He essentially breaks down his interpretation of Twin Peaks based on not only stuff in the show, but behind the scenes information present in articles, a lot of stuff David Lynch has gone on record saying, things from David Lynch's life, his autobiography or his biography or whatever. It's honestly, whether or not you believe what he says, it's a very impressively assembled analysis.
Oh, certainly. Certainly.
It's 4.5 hours long. If you're a fan of the show, watch it in bits. I don't necessarily agree with a lot, but I can understand where he's coming from for a lot. And to distill this theory is that he essentially believes that Twin Peaks is about a town called Twin Peaks that is in a TV show that doesn't know that it's in a TV show. It's a meta it's a show that is a meta examination of TV as a medium. That's the broadest strokes I can paint it in.
So let me explain what I think is very interesting about David Lynch's work, and in particular, The Return.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to put this into words, and what the best I came up with is that every piece of media you watch has a narrative to it.
Yes.
This is the textual narrative. So you're watching Star Wars, and Luke Skywalker goes with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they go on an adventure. That's the textual narrative. That's what's happening in the narrative of the film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there is the thematic or meta narrative. That's what's happening behind. That's the thematic undercurrent, the metaphorical narrative that could be happening elsewhere. So with the original Star Wars, it's the hero's journey that it's based off of. With something like Avatar, the big one, that's the metaphorical narrative behind that is the Native Americans versus the European colonizers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Snowpiercer is a metaphorical narrative about climate change and classism and stuff, right? That's a meta narrative. And then David Lynch does something very interesting that I don't think many other directors have ever done,
or even attempted.
And I'm going to call it it's just disappeared on me. But it is the metatextual narrative.
Okay.
And by that, it is where the actual text, the plot of the film, is influenced by the meta and thematic narrative of what's going on.
Well, there's definitely a lot of allusions to what happened to Twin Peaks behind the scenes, especially in The Return.
But the thing with The Return is that you cannot understand. Here's the simplest way of understanding what a metatextual narrative is. You can't understand what's happening in the movie until you understand what's happening in the thematic realm.
Yeah.
So you need one in order to unlock the other, which I think is very interesting. And you have movies like Synecdoche, New York is kind of like that. A movie like Inception, the very end of Inception, it becomes a metatextual narrative.
Yeah.
Right? Close Up by Abbas Kiarostami. That's a metatextual narrative where the text and the thematics are intertwined into actuality. So I think it is safe to assume, it's safe to say that for certain, whether or not you believe that Twin Peaks is about a television show that doesn't realize it's a television show, it is about a alternate version of reality that people are stuck in.
I agree.
You can call it TV or you can call it something else, but that is exactly what Twin Peaks is.
And a lot of the characters come to grips with this understanding that their reality is not their reality.
Right. And some characters know.
Dale Cooper, I feel, is the most obvious bridge between the realities. The dream logic, not only in the way that it's presented, but the allusions to dreams let you in on it. But I think the main takeaway is when you understand just the obsession that David Lynch has with the contrasting of light and dark, a lot of what is present in Twin Peaks, and especially The Return, becomes a lot easier to digest, I think.
Yeah, so...
digest, not explain.
On a second
viewing... Because I don't think this will ever be true. I don't even think David Lynch knows 100% what is going on.
Yeah, I think if you look at that 4-hour analysis of Twin Peaks, a lot of the stuff I think that I got annoyed with some of it because I thought it was reaching.
It definitely reaches.
You are phrasing this in a specific way to make it fit more than it does.
Also, let's not ignore the fact that he brushes off a lot of what's happening plot-wise in The Return as just misdirection. And I'm
Yeah, and
like,
I
okay, that's such a lazy way to explain so much of what is happening.
right. So what I think he is doing, which part of it, what bugged me, is that he wasn't upfront about that. He
Well,
is
he
he is
also
exploring the thematic, the meta narrative.
yeah,
He isn't trying to explain the actual narrative of the film
yeah,
because I think there is both of those. I think there are both of those in there.
yeah.
Um,
And the way that they intertwine is where it starts to get really confusing.
yeah, I lost my train of thought. Oh, right. So I think David Lynch as a person throughout his filmography has shown that he is very consistent and that he puts himself into his work, and that David Lynch is very much a spiritual person. He's a person who
Yes, he
grew up with the
loves
light and the dark.
transcendental meditation.
Yes, he grew up with the light and the dark. He grew up with television and all of this. The reason why Twin Peaks works as well as it does, The Return, is not because all this was necessarily planned out, but just because David Lynch creates something so David Lynch, it cannot help but be interconnected in a certain way that is him.
Yes. Yeah, I do agree because I think that, regardless of what you think about David Lynch or his movies, or, you can challenge him all you want. I think David Lynch is one of the most genuine filmmakers ever. He is uncompromising in his vision. Everything he puts onto the screen, he believes in. And it doesn't always work, but you can feel the passion there and the emotional connection he has with his work, that even in the slower parts, the more teeth gritting parts, it's still pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, so I don't know how you feel about Twin Peaks and The Return in general, but I think it's a fairly straightforward narrative the
It
more I think about
is.
it.
It
I
is.
it disorients you the first time you're watching it, but I don't think
Yeah.
it's as kind of nonsensical or incoherent as people originally thought it was.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot. So let's get into the final episode, which is a complete departure from what came before it.
It is the most baffling episode in the entire series, and I don't think I'll ever understand what's going on.
I think it's important that we look at Mulholland Drive as a piece of David Lynch's filmography and that he is so consistent with everything that he's done.
Yep.
And that Mulholland Drive is a narrative where most of the film you're going along with one story and then it changes realities and you see a recontextualization of that reality.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that really works so well with Twin Peaks is that David Lynch understands the idea of revisiting, of recontextualizing moments. An example would be in the very beginning of the series, we see the two people watching the box, this experiment. We have no idea what's happening. And then they get killed by this evil entity that appears in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then an episode or two later, we revisit that same scene. But this time we see it's Dale Cooper is floating into that box.
Mm-hmm.
And we cut out and we see, oh, that's the moment when they left the room. Right? We are David Lynch is showing us the same thing again, but this way we have a new understanding of what came before. And what I particularly love about that scene is the question that is posed in the beginning of the series and the end of the series. Is it past? Is it future or is it past?
Or is it past? Yep.
And that's the first hint. Like the setup of the end of the series is set up in one of those moments, those throwaway moments where it's like you're seeing this moment where Dale Cooper is floating into that box and you're like, wait a second, we already saw this. Where are we in the timeline? Is it
exactly?
Are we back then or are we now?
Especially at the beginning when Laura Palmer asks him that question, if he's ready to go back and is it future, is it past? And the second he decides to go back is when Laura Palmer disintegrates. I definitely saw that as the show telling you that this is not what it was, and it can't be what it was,
mm-hmm.
and it has to become something new. And I think that whole examination of not understanding if it's future or is it past definitely shed some light on that scene where it's just a close up of Dale Cooper looking into space superimposed over the climax, which was probably the most baffling thing I saw in the first time watching it. I was just like, wait, what is going on? And it's still really unsettling, but I do think the return, more than any other thing in Twin Peaks, is more metatextual
Yeah.
because it works with people's preconceived understandings of what Twin Peaks is and works against that while also working towards it.
Yeah.
That's what makes it
So,
so unexplainable.
well, I think you could also let's take another moment of recontextualization, because I think that's what's happening at the end of the show.
Yeah.
At the very end, the last moment of the series is Laura. Laura is now Carrie Page in this alternate reality, and they have just knocked on the door and they've gotten no answers.
Uh-huh.
And Dale is confused as to what's going on. And Laura looks up at the house. She hears the name being called, Laura, and she screams.
Uh-huh.
And the electricity shuts out, all the lights go off, and the series is ended. And I think it's quite obvious that this moment happened before in the series.
It
And
happened before the return?
no, it happened like this exact version. This what happened is okay. So earlier in the season, in episode 15,
Yes.
Dougie is listening to the television.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. And then he hears the name Gordon Cole.
Mm-hmm.
And he sticks a fork. He remembers something, sticks a fork in a wall socket. Janie E screams. And the scene ends with the electricity going out.
Okay.
This is an exact mirror of the last final moments of the series.
Okay. Yeah.
And so in that contextualization, I don't necessarily know exactly what is going on at the end, but I think you have to interpret it as, if the series is some kind of dream, which we have been led to believe, this weird alternate reality, that the end of the series is Laura Palmer recognizes, here's her name, Carrie Page, here's Laura. She recognizes it, screams, and then the dream collapses in on itself. The electricity shuts off, and the series is done. Like, if Dougie, in that previous moment, Dougie wakes up from his dream after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he becomes his real self, Dale Cooper.
Yeah.
So this is Carrie Page realizing who she is, and the show can no longer continue. Carrie Page realizes that she's Laura. She may even realize that it is a fabricated reality, and it collapses in on itself. The electricity dies. The electricity, which symbolizes
that's very pessimistic.
the supernatural.
Very sad ending.
Actually, I think it's a positive ending.
Oh,
but
maybe it's just because of how great she is at screaming.
Yeah, think of it as like, this is the. I know people finished The Return and they're like, let's get a 4th season of Twin Peaks. And I watched the end of The Return and I'm like, this is the end. There's nothing after this. I
agree.
It feels finite. And I think if like the electricity shuts off, Carrie Page realizes everything. That's David Lynch essentially saying that like there's no more energy in this show, that we have woken up from this dream finally, that it's irrevocably different.
Yeah.
And I don't, the finality of that, it is kind of sad that Twin Peaks is done, but at the same time, I think that when you're watching it again with the knowledge that, hey, at the very end, the world dies, the electricity dies in this magical world, it makes it all so much brighter, because you're like, this is the last time we get. And that song, the Shadow by Chromatics in the beginning, it's like, for the last time. This is the last time. This is all the Twin Peaks we are getting. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
So that's my interpretation of the ending. I don't necessarily know, can't explain everything, but that's
I don't want to explain everything either.
yeah.
That is, I don't, yeah. So I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoy every time I watch it where I have new little theories or new things become clear to me, and I don't want to ever run out of that.
Yeah. It's I mean, man, the final episode, it begins with Mike asking, is it past or is it future?
Uh-huh.
And I just got chills the first time that happened. I'm like, wow, we've gone through so much, and that question has taken on so much meaning,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know if it's past or future.
Yep.
And then you get to the end, and Dale Cooper asks, "What year is this?" The final episode, the final moments of Twin Peaks: The Return is one of the most haunting things. Even if I can explain it, it will haunt me.
But that's the thing
is,
even when I didn't know what was happening the first time I saw it, like I told you, it deeply affected me, and it was terrifying. And the most terrifying part was that I didn't know why it was terrifying, and that's why I think David Lynch is as acclaimed as he is because he can pull emotions out of you and you don't know why, and that feeling of violation where you don't know why you're feeling the feelings that you're feeling makes you feel them even harder.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Twin Peaks: The Return. It's I
believe
assume
the
if you've
hype.
listened to all of this, you've already seen it.
Yes.
But, it's
Would
great.
you okay? Shall I spring upon you my surprise?
Sure, please do. I forgot all about that until now.
So I'm sending you right now. I've written down 3 Gordon Cole quotes. What I want us to do is I want all 3. I sent it to you on your phone. What I want us to do is we each say these lines in our best David Lynch impression, and we're going to have people vote, and whoever has the better David Lynch impression has to pick a shitty movie for the other person to watch. I'll tell you, I haven't practiced.
Neither have I.
I'll be honest with you. I wanted to, but I thought, nope, I'm going to give this a fair shot.
So another really great David Lynch line, not necessarily quintessential David Lynch, but when I think it doesn't matter what episode, but David Lynch, Gordon Cole fails to shoot Diane, the tulpa.
Yep.
And Albert says, "You've gone soft." And then David Lynch says, "Not where it counts, buddy."
Can I just say that one of the funniest lines in Twin Peaks, it's not even a line, it's the most memeable moment, and that's Gordon Cole saying, "What the hell?" The memes I have seen from that scene alone, amazing.
All right, so how are we beginning this?
Well, I went in order of length.
Okay.
The first line is from The Return. The next 2 are from the original series.
Yes.
And I wanted to pick more lines from The Return, but I feel like a lot of what Gordon Cole does are so small that they're not exactly lines, more so reactions. So the first one, do you want me to go first?
I would like you to go first. Yes.
Okay, so now all right. So for the first one from The Return, when Matthew Lillard is murdered by some sort of entity. "Well, he's dead."
Oh, I've already lost. Oh, you ready?
Yes.
Let me take another sip of beer.
Okay.
"Well, he's dead."
That's pretty good. All right, the second one is when he orders some food from the R&R Diner. Wait, what is it called? Yeah, it's called the R&R Diner, right?
R&R.
Yeah. End of season 1, I think. He orders like a cherry pie and something, and then Shelley asks anything else. He says, "And a glass of water, sweetheart. My socks are on fire."
How does one begin? "And a glass of water, sweetheart. My socks are on fire.
And the third line is from season 2 when Bobby walks in on Gordon Cole talking to Shelley, and he asks, "What the hell is going on?" And he replies, and I quote, "You are witnessing a front three-quarters view of two adults sharing a tender moment."
You are witnessing a front 3/4 view of. No, this is going too much into like a southern accent.
It's
Jesus
little...
Christ.
All right, I'll give you a chance to restart.
No.
This was
No,
just sprung upon you.
You are witnessing a front. No. God damn it. I can't do it.
One
I can't
more
do it for more
chance.
than like. You are No. You.
Okay.
You are witnessing. You are witnessing a front 3/4 view of two adults sharing a tender moment. God. I can see the peaks in my microphone there.
Yeah, oh, it's not going to be fun. So yeah, vote on who had the better David Lynch impression, and
I'll probably cut this segment out and put it specifically just on Instagram.
That's fine.
Make a video of it.
That's fine.
So people don't have to listen to the whole thing.
If you lose, I have hell for you. And I'm not going to tell you until that happens.
You know, I don't think you have hell for me.
I do.
Listen, Chandler, I was going to suggest that eventually we should have a day where we watch 1 or 2 Hallmark movies and just shit on them.
Oh, I've seen Hallmark movies. This
Good. Well,
I have. Oh, don't you worry. It'll be worse.
Oh, good. I've seen terrible stuff.
I know, but you'll never see something insultingly bad as this. But anyways.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
well,
that is.
Is it Gooby?
No, we are all watching Gooby together.
No, this is true.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you have anything else to say? This has been a very lengthy discussion.
Yeah.
But you
Twin Peaks: The Return. It's essentially just an episode about Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you just want to record the other part next week?
No, let's just get it done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So yeah, Twin Peaks: The Return, 5 out of 5. It's my favorite thing David Lynch has ever done. And if I feel as strongly as I did the first time watching it, when I watch it the second time this month, I might just go ahead and make my first tattoo a Twin Peaks tattoo.
Yeah. No, now that I say this, maybe we should wait till next week. If that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay. This is a long episode
it's a long episode, yeah.
Yeah. The Twin Peaks episode.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're in no rush to finish this list.
No, but we're doing so next week on the Split Take podcast, we're going to be doing A Matter of Life and Death. The
second Powell and Pressburger movie.
Yes, the 2 shorts, An Andalusian Dog and A Day in the Country. And then the just director shorts, shorts from famous directors.
Yeah.
I think that's a good slate for next time. It's heavy, but not too much.
It won't be as heavy as this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we will wait.
Yep.
This was a good in-depth conversation.
I would be remiss if we didn't give Twin Peaks the full discussion it warranted, and I feel as if we adequately did it.
Ooh, yes, I'm surprised we talked this long.
That's the thing, is that we've talked this long, and I still think we haven't even come close to talking about everything. But that's the beauty of Twin Peaks. It is so dense and so entertaining and so heartwarming and evil and funny. Ugh.
I'm gonna say this, that I recommend Twin Peaks: The Return so much, and along with that is essentially a recommendation for the entirety of Twin Peaks.
It's true,
because I think it is required viewing that you watch the first season of Twin Peaks all the way through. The second season, there's a few episodes you can skip, and watch Fire Walk with Me. Get into the world, experience Dale Cooper. It's just lighthearted and fun, but it's terrifying at some points. But you need that experience before you get to The Return, which is one of just the greatest things I've ever seen.
It is. Yeah, I think a huge turnoff to people when they're suggested this is just the sheer amount of viewing that goes into it. And I'll admit, I was turned off at first. I can guarantee you, if you get through it all, you will not regret it. It's Twin Peaks. There's a reason it has the reputation it does.
Yeah, yeah.
Believe the
And
hype.
I look forward to whatever David Lynch does next.
Same.